Within this tome are buried the blades of warriors, thieves, and wizards. Tales of their deeds, glories, and triumphs shall ring throughout the ages. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I am your host Liam, aka Hembar, and today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Rogues in the House, a Book of Blades. The Book of Blades is a 2022 anthology released by Rogues in the House podcast. By the way, this review has previously appeared on Spiral Tower Press's website, titled A Book of Blades Highlights the Current Vitality of Sword and Sorcery, which I did also write. But I thought I'd get around to doing the video finally. So we have an introduction here by Matthew John, who's one of the hosts from the Rogues in the House podcast. And he makes references to Robert E. Howard, Frank Frazetta, Carl Edward Wagner, Fritz Leiber, Scott Odin, Howard Andrew Jones, and more. We have a cover by Jesus Garcia. And then with that, we have a nice setup for magic, role magic reads about tough and rough heroes and visceral and weird stories. The stories that follow satisfied this promise from that introduction and from the cover art. We have the first story from a contemporary sword and sorcery legend, and author of Conan the Emerald Lotus, John C. Hawking. He opens this anthology up with By the Sword. It's a classic example of the effectiveness of pithy writing that can lead a story, or lend a story thrilling grace when done with Hawking's charged writing. It is a visceral tale of revenge that doesn't bandy words, making it all the more memorable. Then we have Ghost Song by Chuck Clark, an associate editor at Whetstone Amateur Magazine of Sword and Sorcery. His story is of his character, Turkale. The story brings the gritty savagery that some unholy offspring of Robert E. Howard and Edgar Rice Burroughs might have written. It follows a young Turkale, the somewhat proud hunter, makes a name for himself as a warrior in his tribe. There is a sorcerer's monster that must be brought to the justice of the spear. Then we have L.D. Whitney's Last of the Swamp Tribe, which is an antediluvian tale that is very much unlike the nostalgic paradises of William Morris, and more akin to the savage beauty of Charles Saunders Imro, when he uses his archaeological background to paint an untamed picture of the Stone Age, where spear and fane dominate east of Eden and Adon. Fans of Animal Companions rejoice, for a Grey Wind is one wolf to be remembered in annals and praised in paeans. We have T.A. Markton's Markton brings a menagerie of the grotesque and weird in one bet. Tarvish and Arden have they have a very pleasant style, I felt like, and the characters are still gray and they face fell foes, such as a giant centipede and a grim ruler. The stark yarn of friendship and hearty fun is fit, I think, for any fan of fantasy. And we have The Serpent's Heart, which harkens back to the historical adventure of Harold Lamb. The story is set, it's actually one of De Beer and Captain Awesome, from Howard Andrew Jones's The Desert of Souls and its sequels. It's a historical adventure bringing the Chinese to interact with the ancient Arabs in a first-person point of view, telling from Jones is a master of pulling readers into the world of his story with its clean, sweet prose, and the fact that it's not a secondary world but our own enhances that readability. And then How They Fall by the duo Angeline B. Adams and Remco van Straten, known for The Red Man and Others, bring the horror of war to the reader, with Kayla experiencing the latter half of her first battle. It's detached and almost otherworldly in the visceral bluntness. It's also largely, as the title promises, for people die in war, and is very inglorious. The brevity of the tale packs a punch more than more words could. The use of a female protagonist may remind the readers of classics like C.L. Moore's Jarell Jouari, though where Jarell seems like the exception in both sexes, and unforgiving battle seems to be the norm here in this story. We have The Breath of Death, which is a story told in first person by the hand of Jason M. Waltz, notable for his association with the Rogue Blades Entertainment. The story is overflowing with poetic gloom of the survivor of battle, reflecting on those who perished. The story shows a world weariness and perseverance and hellish grit that no one familiar with the genre would call anything but sword and sorcery. And then S.E. Lindbergh turns the heat up in a different manner with Embracing Ember. The story is from the point of view of an alchemist who follows his daughters, though unnatural, and is tinged much with fire and sexual tension. Lindbergh goes to the basis of human nature in this tale of eldritch darkness and weird peoples. And then J.M. Clark's The Curse of Wine pairs the style of Charles Saunders with the alcoholism of Fritz Leiber, which can be seen in tales of Fafnir the Grey Master sometimes. The promise of the title's serious themes explored by the storytelling capability of Clark. Kiembe is a character that can also be found in Vapors of Zanai and New Edge Sword and Sorcery Zero. Then we have the Get to Gala. Rogues in the House host Matthew John tells a tale of a cursed and tormented being. Calls to question the nature of gifts and their provenance. As is more typical of sword and sorcery than other genres, not all endings are on a They have Crawl by Scott Odin, which features one of the most relatable characters in the whole collection. Odin is known for his gritty detail, but lovely character work in books such as A Gathering of Ravens. It's a tale of survival for a woman who does not want to become a prostitute after the death of her husband. Her first encounter in her new stage of life is deadly, but it comes with unexpected help. It is impressive that Odin can weave a tale that feels hopeless and heartwarming at different times, and in such a short time. Then we have Nathaniel Nat Webb, who's editor of Windgraph and Rayco magazines. He's focusing on cozy fantasy and adventure stories, respectively. The Spine of Viren's Ember begins with Shar in chains and ready to be sacrificed. Shar has the bravado and character to be likable instantly. He must face dark sorcery, and he just needs to find the will. The City of Screaming Pillars by Hugo Award winner Cora Boulert is a tale reminiscent of Clark Ashton Smith. It involves a dead city with gods that still prey on visitors, seeking the riches of the once great place. The story involves a party, which kind of much in the Dungeons & Dragons fiction area of heroic fantasy. The quest here is purely personal and small scale. It entertains and excites in titillating fashion, as the best of fantasy horror, can do in Sword and Sorcery. And Jason Ray Carney, who's editor at Spiral Tower Press, who publishes modern weird fiction. As well, he's a lecturer at Christopher Newport University and editor of The Dark Man, Journal of Robert E. Howard, and Pulp Studies. His story in A Book of Blades is 2 silvers for A Song of Blood. It is a story of the rogue, which has appeared in places like the Chromecast Chronicle #2, for example. This outsider seems to be immortal, and his name is a sobriquet akin to the characters from Glenn Cook's The Black Company. And like Cook, Carney doesn't disappoint when it comes to his dark, thoughtful, and enjoyable read. And I'm actually quite a fan of the rogue and need to read all of those, and I tend to. And then we have The Blood of Old Shard. It's the final story, and one by the prolix John R. Foltz, whose latest work is Worlds Beyond Worlds from DMR Books. So admittedly, this review is a few months old, and maybe it's not his latest work anymore. This is the longest of all the stories, though barely so. It's a macabre tale of vampires' responsibility. It is bloody entertainment and a good way to end the story section of the book, especially since I like vampires. There is a portfolio of Sword and Sorcery art after the stories, featuring predominantly the art of Gilead, but also Laura Leigh Esther, Ursa Doom, L.D. Whitney, Sarah Frazetta, Morgan Gala King, and Hardy Ayula. While short and almost seeming like an afternote that would have been appreciated spread throughout the anthology, it is a good reminder that Sword and Sorcery goes beyond literature and permeates other aspects of art. And overall, A Book of Blades shows the variety that Sword and Sorcery has at its core, a story that show very good realities to things beyond reality, stories that are glorious and triumphant to those that are melancholy and maybe more realistic in their depictions of death and struggle. The skill of modern writers bring dubious magic and sharp blades to bear in an entertaining fashion in common with the classic Sword and Sorcery, but the voices that are interested in what the genre can achieve with some tweaking and experimentation and openness to the new edge. Our readers will find that the genre is alive and its future bright like the blaze of the heroes within. The addition of the audiobook narration by Amber Lynn brings the stories to life, in a tone that can also bring a breath of magic with the narration. Anyways, Liam Williams, ICM, I'll catch you next time.